Well, today, I'm incredibly pleased to introduce iMac. This is iMac.
The iMac G3 was the computer that was released for the average consumer. It was released in 1998 with only one color, which was Bondi Blue. It came with a 233 MHz processor, which was then later upgraded to 333 MHz, 400 MHz, 450 MHz, 500 MHz, 600 MHz, and 700 MHz. This computer was extremely easy to set up and get connected to the internet, which is why it was a really big hit, because most computers were very difficult to get connected to the internet. With this, all you had to do is connect up the built-in 56K modem, and it would help you do it as soon as you turned on the computer. The iMac G3 also had a lot of change for the technology world. Most computers before 1998 didn't have USB, or if they did, they'd only have maybe one USB, and most computers were still using serial and other ports like that. You know, a designated printer port. Apple changed that. They just had two USB and FireWire, which was used for many different things, like they used that cable for external cameras, such as the iSight camera, which they released a little bit later. It could transfer up to 400 megabytes per second on that cable, which was really advanced for 1998. Because of all the attention that they were having with the iMac G3, they decided that they needed to update their consumer laptop, which is when they released the iBook G3, which is now known as the iBook G3 clamshell. It was first released with blueberry and tangerine, but then later other colors came out, such as graphite, indigo, and key lime. The iBook G3 was just as easy to get connected to the internet as the iMac G3. It might have even been easier. With the iBook clamshell, it was so easy to just install an airport card. And you could also buy the Apple Airport base station, and then you could have Wi-Fi for your iMac G3 and your iBook G3. Now, there was no real point in getting Wi-Fi for your iMac G3 because most people normally just set it up either right next to their modem or right next to their phone jack. The specs for the first iBook G3 was a 300 MHz PowerPC G3 processor and would either come with 32 or 64 megabytes of RAM. Then the later models had a 366 MHz PowerPC processor, and the more rare ones had a 466 MHz processor. All of these could support up to 544 or 576 megabytes of RAM. These computers were similarly spec'd to the iMac G3, and then later it switched to the iBook G3 Snow, where they turned into just an average looking laptop which was white.